policies to affect climate change, to improve the situation, and we'll continue to work hard together with the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change and all of my colleagues on this side of the House and any colleagues who want to help us to make sure that we leave the planet in better shape than it was for our children. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Statement by members. Déclaration des députés. L'honorable.
The honourable member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, the scar of December 6, 1989 has never healed. The pain, desolation, the feeling of loss, and the waste of these beautiful lost lives still affect us. And every December 6, Quebec remembers sadly. This is our burden. Before the tragedy of the Polytechnique, we thought that something like that was simply impossible. And we thought that equality between men and women was something that we all took for granted. But Polytechnique reminded us in a cruel fashion that that is not the case. We have a duty of vigilance. We must remain vigilant because we should take nothing for granted. On December 6th, we will remember these women, and we will always denounce with the same ardor violence against women. We will never forget, we will never accept, and we will never allow this pain to disappear so that something like December 6, 1989 never happens again. Thank you.
For Burlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, International Volunteer Day, we celebrated the millions of Canadians who volunteer in their communities and abroad to make the world a better place. Today, I'd like to thank the people in my community who give so generously of themselves. People like Bob Pring, a volunteer at the Art Gallery and Red Cross, Burlington's Senior Person of the Year, who works with the Woodcarvers Guild to carve beautiful and unique canes for military veterans. Chuck Learn, with Children of Christmas Past, has spent the last decade delivering thousands of gifts across Southern Ontario to seniors who spend the holidays alone. And Esperanza Peacock, devoted and enthusiastic, she has spent countless hours helping newcomers to Burlington navigate the city and find their place in the community. These are just 3 examples of the wonderful people who volunteer their time and talents in Burlington. Thank you to all of Canada's volunteers at home and around the world for strengthening and enriching our social fabric. You truly make a difference.
The honourable member for North Okanagan-Shuswap.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to celebrate the people and opportunities of the North Okanagan-Shuswap. While the area is well known for its summertime holidays with beaches and vineyards, it is also a wonderful wintertime playground. Starting now are horse-drawn sleigh rides, some with theatre along the way, and skating on frozen ponds complete with bonfires and hot chocolate to warm your toes and your spirit. You can experience the thrill of our famous champagne powder while snowboarding on Silver Star, heli-skiing on the Monashis, or on Nordic trails scattered across the riding. Later in the season, there is the Vernon Winter Carnival, the largest in Western Canada. With nearly 100 events, and many of them free, there is sure to be something for everyone. But the biggest attraction is our people. Summer or winter, you will find welcoming faces, making the North Okanagan-Shuswap an amazing place to live, work, and play. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Etobicoke Centre.
Mr. Speaker, for thousands of women, what ought to be the security of family, hearth and home becomes a place of fear. On any given night, more than 3,300 Canadian women escape domestic violence to sleep in emergency shelters. The solemn vow of, I will love and honor you all the days of my life, a shattered dream. 50% of Canada's women have experienced sexual or physical violence after the age of 16. In Canada, the most horrific act of hate-fueled mass murder occurred on December 6, 1989 at École Polytechnique in Montreal. On that terrible day, 14 young women were rounded up, separated from their male counterparts, and murdered, shot in cold blood. We must expose and address the culture of violence, the propagation of hatred against women, whether cloaked in popular music or on the internet. Canadians must confront the issue of a culture of violence against women.
L'honorable député d'Algoma, Manitoulin.
The Honourable Member for Algona, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing. Mr. Speaker, in this holiday season, Canadians are thinking more about helping their communities. But for people who work in food banks, this is work that they do every day.
Hunger never takes a holiday, and that need is always growing. Individuals like Pastor Dan Lee of Chapleau are part of the solution. He founded the food bank alongside his ministry. Or groups like the Rotary Club of Kapuskasing, who are taking their turn running the food bank after years of great service by the Kinsman Club. But food banks aren't the only way that need is met in the North. On Manitoulin Island this November, over 6,000 individuals were served during the Homeland Mission free food giveaway led by Pastor Ronnie DeForge. And in Elliott Lake, the Alcolette Memorial Christmas Dinner continues a 33-year tradition of giving to those in need of food and company over the holidays. These are just a few examples of how people all across Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing are volunteering to make their communities more compassionate and caring for the holidays and all through the year. Thank you, and happy holidays to all.
The Honourable Member for South Shore, St. Margaret.
Mr. Speaker, I'm rising in the House today to recognize heroic actions of Eric Nickerson, Trevor Monroe, and their fellow Coast Guard members. Last month, the Canadian Coast Guard responded to a distress signal 50 miles offshore of Clark's Harbour, Nova Scotia. A helicopter and 2 Coast Guard vessels responded to the call of a vessel in distress. Mr. Nickerson, a crew member on the Coast Guard vessel Spray, ended up in the water, supporting the person from the jeopardized vessel for 15 to 20 minutes before helping him to safety. Mr. Nickerson doesn't consider himself to be a hero. He says this is just part of his job. As you know, Mr. Speaker, the lobster season in LFA 33 and 34 opened last week, and safety of their loved ones is always on people's minds at this time of year. It's important to recognize the work that the crews of fishing vessels and the men and women of the Coast Guard do for folks back home so that their families are home at the end of the day. I would like to wish all of those who work on the water a safe and prosperous season.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, as the holiday season approaches, Canadians across this country will spend time with family and friends. But during this time of year, it's important to remember that there are thousands of Canadians who are away from their families. These are the brave men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces who are currently protecting our borders at home and our values and our allies abroad. Not only is it very difficult to be away from their loved ones, they are doing dangerous work in service to Canada. Whether it be in our high Arctic, along our coastlines, working with our partners in the United States, stopping the flow of drug trafficking in the Caribbean, supporting our allies in Ukraine and Eastern Europe, fighting terrorism in the Middle East, or any other mission that the brave men and women in uniform are taking on, it's at this time of year we are especially thankful for their service. Wherever they are deployed, at home or abroad, we wish all members of the Canadian Armed Forces a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, season greetings, and a healthy and prosperous New Year.
The Honourable Member for Ottawa West Nepean.
27 years ago today, I was a first-year university student. I remember walking the halls between classes, hearing the gasps of students huddled around the televisions as the news broke. A man walked into École Polytechnique in Montreal and shot and killed 14 young women just like me. Across the country, Canadians, myself included, will take a moment today to mark the tragedy. I would like to commend those on the front line who day in and day out continue to support women, survivors, and those vulnerable to violence. Je parle des organismes.
I'd like to mention organizations in my riding, like NROC, whose counseling program provides victimized women the opportunity to build new connections and leave their isolation behind. There are also volunteers at Nelson House and other shelters in the area that tirelessly work to help women in need.
Mothers Advocacy Network and many other organizations for their work in ending gender-based violence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mississauga, East Cooksville.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate the Laborers International Union of North America Local 183. Founded in 1952, LIUNA represents workers from every aspect of construction. The men and women build Canada's roads and bridges, schools and hospitals, railroads and pipelines. By surpassing the 50,000 members milestone, they are the biggest local in North America. Since 2011, the Executive Board, led by their business manager, Jack Oliveira, put an emphasis on strengthening their membership, not just for the workers, but for their families. They've worked tirelessly to ensure workers have fair wages and safe working conditions. Working together with employers as well as municipalities, the provincial governments and federal governments to achieve better regulation and strong policing of worksites. With this growth, Local 183 will continue to provide best-in-class pensions and benefits for its members and retirees and reach its next goal of 55,000 members by 2020. Congratulations to Jack Oliveira and his team on this great achievement and the many more to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Niagara Falls.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise in this House to recognize that the Right Honourable Brian Mulroney, Canada's 18th Prime Minister, will be the first Canadian Prime Minister to be named a Commander of the French Legion of Honour. The award is France's highest honour, which was established by Napoleon in 1802. Mr. Mulroney is being recognized for, among other things, strengthening the ties between Canada and France. The very fact that his leadership is being recognized yet again on the world stage speaks to the magnitude of the impact that Mr. Mulroney made as Canada's Prime Minister. He was the first Western leader to stand up against apartheid, the first to call for the release of Nelson Mandela, and the first to recognize the independence of Ukraine. To be named a Commander of the French Legion of Honour is yet another great achievement for Canada's 18th Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Brian Mulroney. I can't say enough how proud I am to have served in his government. Colleagues, please join with me in celebrating Mr. Mulroney's latest accomplishment.
Honourable member for Avalon.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to recognise the Mercer family of Conception Bay South. In 2002, Bernie and Louise lost their daughter Alex to a rare form of brain cancer at the age of 9. 11 years later, the Mercers lost their second child, Riley, to the same terrible disease at the age of 15. Such tremendous loss devastated so many, but with the support of friends, family and community, they have worked hard to ensure Alex and Riley's memory lives on. Even in light of such tragedy and heartbreak, the Mercers displayed incredible courage and love. This Saturday, I will join the Mercers for one of many events that they organise, the 3rd annual Christmas Toy Drive in Riley's name. Giving back to the community while paying tribute to their children is now Bernie and Louise's passion. C'est avec plaisir.
It is with great pleasure that I rise in this House to recognise such a remarkable family. I invite all my colleagues to join me in thanking them for their commitment and their dedication. The Honourable Member for Brossard-Saint-Lambert. Mr. Speaker, on the 27th anniversary of the Polytechnique massacre, as we pay homage to the 14 young women who lost their lives on that terrible day of December 6, 1989, it's time for us to reflect about the road that we've traveled since then. I'd like to mention the Coalition for Gun Control, an organization that works to prevent gun-related crime. With significant legislative changes made by Liberal governments from the 1990s through to 2012, gun-related homicides against women have plummeted, as have suicides, particularly among young people. Unfortunately, under the Conservative government in recent years, there were significant steps backwards, including including the fact that the number of restricted firearms nearly doubled to 800,000. In the memory of these 14 murdered young women, we need to do better. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, Île-d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, for 25 years, we have been marking the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, following the tragic events of the Polytechnique massacre in Montreal on December 6, 1989. Unfortunately, again this year, far too many women have lost their lives, and many others have been abused simply because they're women. Violence affects all women around the world, regardless of their age, their socioeconomic status, or their level of education. A country like Canada needs to be a world leader when it comes to combating violence against women, and needs to set an example at home. No one living in Canada should have to put up with violence or bullying against women and girls, whether it be in our families our workplaces, or our public spaces. Mr. Speaker, to all the women who have been victims of violence, I wish them courage. And for those that we've lost, you will not be forgotten. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Acadie-Bathurst. Mr. Speaker, it's with great sadness that I rise to inform you of the passing of a remarkable man, Mr. Christian Brun. Christian was the Director General of the Maritime Fishermen's Union. He was involved in the fishing industry since 2004, and he was also the President of the Independent Fishers Association of Canada. We met Christian many times, and he always vigorously defended the interests of fishers and found concrete solutions from his exchanges with others. The fishing industry is losing a great man, but his voice will continue to be heard for a long time.
And Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Fisheries and Ocean and the Canadian Coast Guard, I join the Minister in offering my most sincere condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of Christian Brun. Repose en paix, Christian.
Rest in peace, Christian. The Honourable Member for Outremont. Mr. Speaker, on December 6, 1989, École Polytechnique in Montreal was the scene of a heinous crime. 14 engineering students were murdered simply because they were women who dared to want to enter a so-called male profession. This is a horrible event that we always need to remember. Despite all of the progress made in recent years, we have not managed to eliminate inequality and violence against women. Every day, women face discrimination, cyberbullying, and they continually have to fight for pay equality. Many groups fight to defend the rights of interests. For example, the organization Pixel has helped women enter a new technical field that is dominated by men, the video game industry. The best way to remember the victims of the École Polytechnique is to stand up against all forms of violence and discrimination against women.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, December 6th, is the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. 27 years ago today, 14 women were killed in cold blood at the École Polytechnique in Montreal. This is a dark day in Canada's history. We will never forget the victims of these crimes.
It strengthens our resolve to end violence against women. This is a duty that calls us all to action. Men and women, government and business, community organizations, and everyday citizens. Because remembrance is not enough, Mr. Speaker. We need concrete actions. And as parliamentarians, we have the power to help women who have been the target of violence, whether it's verbal or emotional or physical. So, Mr. Speaker, today and every day, let's work together, men and women, to end violence against women.
The Honourable Member for Dorval-Lachine-LaSalle. Mr. Speaker, December 6th is the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. This day was created so that we would never forget the young women who lost their lives at École Polytechnique in Montreal simply because they were women.
Women is still as relevant today. Even though 27 years have passed, the shock our nation felt that day still remains with us. We join with the families and friends of these young women, with the people of Montreal and all Canadians mourning their loss.
Every action that we take to end violence against women matters. Together, we can build a society where women and girls are respected and treated equally.
Action we take in our communities to stop gender-based violence matters. Thank you.
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence.
House to rise and observe a minute of silence in memory of the victims of the tragic event that happened 27 years ago at École Polytechnique in Montreal. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Oral questions, questions orales, honorable leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, nearly a year since the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women was announced, and families are now saying that they're being left in the dark. Conservatives support the inquiry, but it's also our job to hold the government to account. There is no website, barely any staff has been hired, and no testimony will begin being heard until at least next spring, if at the earliest. Yet Indigenous women are still suffering, and there is no interim plan in place to help them. Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister explain what action has been taken to help at-risk Indigenous women?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, our government is deeply committed to renewing the relationship with Indigenous people, and we're delivering on our promise to implement the Truth and Reconciliation's call to action. In this year alone, we launched the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, have launched the overhaul of the child welfare system, made historic investments in First Nations education, over $8 billion in Budget 2016, and we support the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. This is just the beginning, and we are committed to making meaningful progress towards true reconciliation.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's new tax on healthcare is just one of the things he's doing to make it harder for Canadian families to get by. We already knew that wages of Canadian workers are not keeping up with the rising cost of living under the Liberals. But now we've learned that families may pay up to $420 more for food each year. At a time when Canadians are struggling to make ends meet, why is the Prime Minister making life more expensive?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we know that many Canadians are struggling. We know that middle-class Canadians have seen a decade where their taxes have been not been the key issue, but where the growth has been the big challenge. We moved forward immediately as a government to lower taxes on middle-class Canadians. We moved forward with the Canada Child Benefit, which is helping 9 out of 10 families with children to have a better situation with their family. We recognize the challenges facing middle-class Canadians. We've taken measures to help them today. We're going to invest in tomorrow so their children will be better off tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are planning yet another new tax on employee health and dental benefits. Nowhere during the election did the Prime Minister say that he would tax health and dental benefits. But that's not a surprise because he's raised income taxes, carbon taxes, CPP taxes, he's hiked taxes on Canadian savings, and he's even raising taxes on kids' sports and music lessons. Why is the Prime Minister raising healthcare taxes to pay for his own out-of-control spending?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, again, the first thing we did was lower taxes on Canadians. We think it's important to remember that the party opposite did not vote for the reduction in middle-class taxes. They did not vote for the Canada Child Benefit. Now, what is true is that we are focused on tax fairness. We are focused on tax simplicity. So we are looking at ways to ensure that our tax code is fair for Canadians. We are looking at ways to make sure that Canadians can understand the tax code. That's what we move forward on, helping Canadians through lower taxes, understood taxes.
Honorable chef de l'opposition.
Member, Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, we all know that privileged access activities do not respect the government's policy. Now we know that the Prime Minister is pleased with the talks about this. The plan is so troubling that we asked the lobbying commissioner to intervene. When will the Prime Minister admit his total failure when it comes to ethics? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, we undertook public consultation that is unprecedented in order to meet the challenge that Canadians are facing. The fundraising rules are among the strictest in the country, and we follow those rules. The Chief Electoral Officer has stated that political financing rules are the strictest and most transparent in the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's Thanks. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's Cash for Access events aren't open and transparent. They're hidden and they're secretive. We found out about his event with Chinese billionaires only after it was reported on a website in China. Guests have plainly said that at several fundraisers, the Prime Minister openly discusses government business they were seeking his support for. So what are we to believe? Has the Prime Minister ever discussed government business with someone who paid the Liberal Party to meet with him to seek his support on a topic that benefits them directly? Yes or no?
The Leader of the Government in the House.
Mr. Speaker, as I just finished saying in French, I will say in English that when it comes to the level of consultation this government is having with Canadians, it is unprecedented. When it comes to the rules around fundraising,
listen to the answer, Gilligan.
They are the most open and transparent, and they are the most strict across the country, and this government and this party will continue to follow the rules. The member knows very well that only Canadians can donate to Canadian political parties. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Député d'Outremont.
Honourable Member for Outremont.
The Fisheries Minister told this House that government business is not discussed at Cash for Access events, but the host of one of these events not only contradicted him, but confirmed that he lobbied the Prime Minister without being registered. And now we learn that this same individual was personally invited by the Prime Minister to meet the Chinese Premier, and as a result, he accepted to hold a Liberal fundraiser. Is there really nobody on the government side who can see the problem here?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I will remind members and Canadians that if they don't want to listen to myself, they can listen to the Chief Electoral Officer, who stated that Canada's political financing laws are the most advanced and constrained and transparent in the world. We know that when it comes to fundraising, the rules are very strict, especially across this country. This party will continue to follow the rules. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, member for Outremont.
From sunny ways to shady deals.
If, as the Government House Leader says, Canada has the strictest political financing rules, why is it that the Prime Minister took the trouble to present new rules prohibiting exchange or access to his own political party against money? So, was it just malarkey, as is the case with them? Government House Leader. The member has confirmed that he heard the answer I gave many times. Fundraising rules are the strictest in the country, and we follow the rules. The Chief Electoral Officer has said that Canadian political financing rules are the most advanced, transparent, and strict in the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Député d'Outremont.
Honourable Member for Outremont. The Parliamentary Budget Officer is categorical. The government has abandoned its responsibility for and Aboriginal children are paying the price. The Liberals promise to do better than the Conservatives, but the broken promises are accumulating. Legal battles against Aboriginal rights continue, and the Liberals continue to use the Harper system to approve pipelines. Does the government understand that First Nations communities have had enough with lies and broken promises? The Honourable Member for the Treasury Board
rightly noted that the previous government underfunded K-12 education on reserves, and that is why we prioritize closing the gap in First Nations education outcomes, including a historic $2.6 billion over 5 years for K-12 education on reserve, and nearly $1 billion in educational infrastructure, which today's report said is addressing these shortfalls. We will not let another generation of First Nations youth behind.
Honourable Member for Outremer.
Justice Sinclair said that the government's attitude on First Nations court cases like the 60 Scoop is, quote, unconscionable. Following the Kinder Morgan approval, Grand Chief Stuart Phillip said the Prime Minister, quote, completely failed to do his job. And to add recklessness to betrayal, the Natural Resources Minister mused about calling in the military to quell protests. Will the Liberals back away from this dangerous rhetoric, and will they show First Nations communities the respect they deserve?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I believe that among the reasons that Canada is such a special place and a great country is because we welcome a diversity of opinion, we appreciate the importance of peaceful protest, and we are protected by the rule of law. That is what I intended to say in Edmonton last week, and I now look forward to working with Indigenous peoples and all Canadians so that our children and those who follow will have a brighter and cleaner future.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, regardless of the answer we get, the Prime Minister admitted in this House that he related his presence to this fundraising activity with Chinese billionaires to talk about Canadian issues, and this is to attract investors to Canada. Was it a political financing activity for the Liberal Party, or an activity where you could lobby the Prime Minister for your own interests, the Government House Leader? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We undertook unprecedented public consultation in order to meet the challenges of Canadians. As I said many times, the rules again about fundraising are the strictest in the country, and we will follow those rules. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, with regard to that meeting, which was non-Canadian, they didn't pay to be there, but they were there, and they had access to the Prime Minister. That's quite clear. It's very difficult for us to have access to the Prime Minister and ask questions, so are we going to have to pay $1,500 too to gain access to him? The Honourable Government House Leader, order please. Mr. Speaker, the member knows full well that only Canadians can give funds to political parties, and he knows our government undertook unprecedented consultations. Everyone has access to our government and to the Prime Minister, and we will continue to work for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals don't seem to get what is wrong with their cash for access fundraisers, so I'm going to spell it out for them. It's not a problem to have a fundraiser. It is a problem to invite people who are clearly doing business with the government. That's called conflict of interest. Right. Then when you do favors for your fundraising guests, like approving their bank or appointing them to the Halifax Port Authority, that's called preferential access and undue influence. Right. So when will the Prime Minister stop violating government rules, ethics rules, and his own rules? Yeah.
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we have some of the strongest rules around financing in the country, and those rules are always followed. Sure. I have said this time and time again, and I will continue to remind members of this House and to Canadians, This government is committed to responding to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing. We will continue to consult with Canadians, we will continue to engage with Canadians, and we will continue to work hard for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Sarnia.
Canadians deserve a real answer from an open and transparent government. Mr. Speaker, when I used to work in engineering and construction building projects for China, I was aware of the corruption there. Bribes to get permits were common practice. However, this is Canada, Mr. Speaker, so when I see wealthy Chinese investors donating to the Prime Minister's Family Foundation and looking for openings to buy up our country's assets by greasing the palms of the Liberal Party with a $1,500 cash for access fundraiser, I get concerned. Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister put a stop to this Liberal corruption?
Order. Let's have some order. We don't want to lose time from question period. Order. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, and I will repeat once again that when it comes to fundraising, we have some of the strictest rules across this country, and it's important that the member understand that it is also true that the rules clearly state that only Canadians can donate to Canadian political parties.
You should know this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, it appears China is now dictating how we spend money on health care for our seniors. 80 elite business people attended a fundraiser in the home of a wealthy Chinese businessman where the Prime Minister was directly lobbied to support this Chinese foreign investment. This type of investment appears to need approval by Cabinet under the Canada Investment Act. The Prime Minister has exposed himself by selling access to an issue that will have to come before Cabinet. So when will the Prime Minister finally put an end to these shady, corrupt, cash for access events?
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, with respect to the Investment Canada Act, it's an independent process that is put under place to look at the net benefit, economic benefit for Canada, Mr. Speaker. I, as the Minister responsible for innovation, science, and economic development, am responsible for overseeing that process, Mr. Speaker. I can assure the member and this House that any decision we make will be in the best interest of Canadians, Mr. Speaker. That's always guiding our decisions. It's an independent process, Mr. Speaker, and we take that process very seriously.
Here, member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, and this just in. The individual who organized the Prime Minister's Vancouver fundraiser in November with Chinese millionaires is now bragging the fundraiser was a quid pro quo. He got an invitation from the Prime Minister to meet the Chinese Premier in Ottawa and then offered to host the Cash for Access fundraiser in return. Mr. Speaker, the gig is up. This rotten, stinking, filthy, corrupt Cash for Access fundraising scheme has finally been exposed for what it is. So the only question is, when will the Prime Minister...
Order the Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, it's important that the member recognize that when it comes to political financing, we have some of the strongest rules across this country. And when all the rules are followed, no conflicts of interest can exist. This government is committed to working hard to respond to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing, the concerns that my constituents raise with me, the concerns that many members in this House hear from their constituents. Let's get to work so that we can actually work harder for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, we're not the only ones to realize that the mydemocracy.ca questionnaire is completely ridiculous. Hats off to the thousands of citizens who ridicule these questions on social media. For example, would you prefer online voting or be chased by a horde of killer clowns? That's a question of values. But how can we take seriously a questionnaire that puts us in these fantastical categories? Where did they find this quiz? In Star System or the National Enquirer?
A democratic institution.
Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question and his sense of humour. And I'd also like to thank the tens of thousands of Canadians who have already participated in mydemocracy.ca. Mr. Speaker, this initiative is about empowering as many Canadians as possible to be part of this conversation. I encourage all Canadians and all members of this House to do so.
The honourable member for Stina, Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, watching the Liberals' electoral reform process is like watching that bus in Montreal slowly sliding down the icy hill, mesmerizing disaster in slow motion. After just one day, the minister's electoral reform survey turned into a dumpster fire on social media. Pollsters like Mario Canseco at Insights West said, I quote, "I've seen cosmopolitan quizzes that were better designed. Bad questionnaire equals unusable data." So I've got a question for the minister, inspired by her own survey. Does she believe seats in Parliament should be allocated based on popular vote or based on the outcome of rock, paper, scissors?
Order. The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, we are pleased that so many Canadians are involved in mydemocracy.ca and engaging with the questions. Here's what Cliff, the CEO of this Canadian company who created My Democracy, had to say. We worked with an advisory panel
I know that members are enjoying the humor in today's question period. But we need to hear the questions, and we need to hear the answers, and we don't need to hear anybody else when they haven't got the floor. So let's show a little respect for each other here, or at least for this place. The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions. Order.
Mr. Speaker, I think we can all agree that we are proud of Canadian scientists. We work with an advisory panel of prominent scholars in areas such as research design, survey methodology, and electoral politics. We developed a survey that drew from existing literature on electoral reform in Canada and tried to identify various values.
The Honourable Member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Mr. Speaker, last Friday the Prime Minister described the mydemocracy.ca survey in the Toronto Star as, quote, a fun little questionnaire. Well, he was so right. Based on your responses, the website groups you as a guardian, a challenger, a cooperator, a fossil, or a snowflake. I found that I'm a unicorn. The shared values of unicorns include rainbows, sparkles, and ranked ballot. My question to the minister is this. Will she now share with Canadians the identities of the academics who advised the Liberals to model their survey on the sorting hat at Hogwarts?
Order. We're losing time. I know members are enjoying question period. They wouldn't want it to be shorter today with all this fun they're having. The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, it appears the member opposite has gone to mydemocracy.com and not mydemocracy.ca. I encourage him to go back to the website. Mr. Speaker, this questionnaire is about reaching out to those Canadians who are not engaged in this conversation. This engagement initiative is about hearing from as many voices as possible before we make a decision. Mr. Speaker, surely we can all agree that it's a good idea to hear from more people.
Stop calling me Shirley. The Honourable Member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Well, don't blame me for going to the wrong website, Mr. Speaker. They only registered mydemocracy.ca with GoDaddy on October the 24th. Last Thursday, check that out, it's true. Last Thursday, the minister said the committee ducked its responsibilities because it didn't recommend a particular electoral system. Why then doesn't her survey contain any questions about any particular electoral system? Doesn't this just mean that when the responses are all counted, the minister will be lecturing Canadians about how they too ducked the hard choices and failed?
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, our government will be responding to the committee's report in due course. And let's go to page 2 of the report, which said increasing involvement in the greater political process is a shared goal of all members of the committee. The committee recognizes that fulfilling the objective of this principle requires ongoing work and commitment. Mr. Speaker, we agree. Engaging more Canadians is exactly what mydemocracy.ca is about. We're encouraged by the Canadians who are accepting our invitation and encourage all members of this House to join us and Canadians.
Honourable Member for Banff Airdrie.
Well, Mr. Speaker, when I was taking the Minister's BuzzFeed, democracy quiz, I learned 2 things. First, that I'm more of a Monica than a Rachel. And as it turns out, the Liberals will only count the surveys that they want to. It says that you don't have to provide personal information, but if you don't give your gender, your year of birth, your level of education, your household income, and other demographic information like your postal code, your input will just be thrown out. So, was the minister misleading this House when she said that Canadians didn't need to provide their personal information?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Speaker, we're thrilled that tens of thousands of Canadians are engaging in mydemocracy.ca, and the member opposite knows that providing demographic information is completely optional. It's not required to engage with mydemocracy.ca. Responses will remain anonymous, and any data collected will be protected by the Federal Privacy Act. I encourage all members and Canadians to engage with this exciting new initiative.
The honourable member for Richmond-Tabasca. Mr. Speaker, in this House, in the past year, there have been over 600 government interventions, and we keep hearing the same cassette from the minister. At the same time, a parliamentary committee representative of this House consulted the Canadian public as well as experts for 6 months and came to a single conclusion. If we want to change the voting system, we have to have a referendum of the entire population. Mr. Speaker, will the minister finally respect this institution, the Canadian public, and demand a referendum if she wants to change her voting system?
I appreciate the member office's passion for a referendum, and I encourage all members of this House to read the committee's report. This government will be responding to the report in due course.
Honourable Member for Rimouski-Nejet, Témiscouata-les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, the financial crisis started less than 10 years ago and was caused by Wall Street firms, including Morgan Stanley. Today, the Liberals are calling on Morgan Stanley to advise them on privatizing Canadian ports. In 2014, Credit Suisse paid a record $2.4 billion fine in the U.S. for tax evasion. And today, the Liberals are asking Credit Suisse to advise them on privatizing airports. What's next? Are they going to ask Tony Accurso to advise them on infrastructure? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And clearly, as a government, we are looking at all kinds of options. And when it comes to airports, rest assured that we will not be doing anything unless it's in the interest of air passengers, air travelers. Ports are extremely important to economic drivers in this country, economic engines, and there again, we won't do anything unless it's in the best interest of our ports and our economy. Thank you.
North Island, Powell River.
Speaking of infrastructure, the Competition Bureau is already witnessing some collusion taking place in the federal infrastructure program. In fact, investigations have been launched, and according to the Bureau, developments could be announced in the coming months. Liberals have been warned by the Bureau that shady companies will definitely be tempted to pull a fast one on taxpayers. Do the Liberals understand the danger? What safeguards are they putting in place to protect Canadians from being scammed?
The Honourable Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, the 98% of the infrastructure that we fund is owned by provinces and municipalities, and we expect our partners to ensure that their procurements are fair, transparent, and provide value for Canadians. Infrastructure Canada provides infrastructure for funding for projects for municipalities and provinces. And these agreements require that project proponents attest that contractors are audited fairly, and the department has rigorous reporting and auditing provisions in place. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Central Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women in Canada. This day marks the anniversary of the death in 1989 of 14 young women at l'École Polytechnique de Montréal who were murdered simply because they were women. Can the Minister for the Status of Women inform this House what actions we can take to remember the victims and ensure that this type of senseless violence never happens again?
Minister for the Status of Women.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague from Central Nova for the question. Today, Canadians remember the tragic murder of 14 young engineering students at l'École Polytechnique de Montréal who were killed because they were women. Our government is taking important actions to raise awareness about violence against women and girls, help prevent it, and support survivors. And we're currently developing a federal gender-based violence strategy that will prevent and address violence. Today, we invite all Canadians to renew their commitment to ending gender-based violence and reflect on this solemn occasion by observing a minute of silence or participating in a vigil. Our actions do matter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are doing anything but making Canada's tax system fair and progressive. Talk shows and Liberal friends will be receiving tax cuts, while hardworking Canadians will be seeing a new health tax. Introducing this new health tax on over 13 million Canadians is targeting the middle-class families, all because the Liberals can't control their reckless spending. Mr. Speaker, will the Liberals assure Canadians that they will not implement a tax on health and dental benefits? Simply yes or no.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, as mentioned, we started off in government by lowering taxes on Canadians. The people opposite, they have voted against a reduction in taxes for middle-class Canadians. They have voted against the Canada Child Benefit, which is helping 9 out of 10 families with children. We can assure Canadians that we are working to ensure that our tax system is fair. We can assure Canadians that we are working to ensure it's simple. What I can tell all Canadians is as we review our tax system, we are not looking at any measure in isolation, and we are moving forward in a way to ensure fairness and simplicity.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, we voted against a deficit, a $30 billion deficit, and the lack of spending control that we've seen of this government for the past year. Mr. Speaker, this government invented the Liberal carbon tax. It invented new costs for the pension plan, and now they're inventing the health and dental insurance tax. Mr. Speaker, it's not just going to affect a few Canadians. More than 13 million Canadians will be paying an additional tax, a Liberal health tax, a Liberal dental tax. Can the Minister explain why? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I want to be clear. We cut taxes for the middle class. That was very important. We introduced the Canada Child Benefit. That will help 9 families out of 10. Now, we want to ensure that our tax system is clear, stable, fair, etc. That's very important, Mr. Speaker. We will continue with our studies, and nothing has been determined. We are focusing on a fair, comprehensive system.
Oral Madonna.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Justice Minister dodged my question about who leaked the marijuana report. Everyone seems to have seen this report, yet she insists that her ministerial colleagues have not. I asked her if she's launched an investigation into her leak, and her lack of a direct answer makes it look like she's hiding something. The question is, who is the Justice Minister protecting?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Ministry of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, our government committed to legalizing, strictly regulating and restricting access to marijuana in order to keep it out of the hands of youth and to keep profits out of the hands of criminals. The government, in order to get the best advice on what a regulated regime for legal access to marijuana could look like, appointed a task force of 9 eminently qualified Canadians. The task force finalized this report on November the 30th, and it will be released to all MPs and the public in mid-December. And if I may be very clear in response to the member opposite's speculations, no member of our government has yet seen the final report. We will see it at the same time as...
The honourable member for Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte.
Final report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So far, the Justice Minister has told us that they see no need to investigate the leak. We know that the RCMP has been asked to investigate. We know that the Ontario Securities Commission is investigating. We know that the document has been leaked. When will the Minister begin her own investigation?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, to be very clear, the task force finalized its report on November the 30th, and in mid-December, that report will be released to all MPs and to the public. If I may be clear again, no member of our government has yet seen the final report, and we will see it at the same time as every member of this House when it is made public in mid-December. Thank you.
The honourable member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Today we honour the memory of the women murdered at L'École Polytechnique massacre. In Canada and around the world, violence against women is intolerably high. Over half of Canadian women will experience violence, and thousands of Indigenous women have gone murdered and missing in the past 30 years. The United Nations critiqued this government for not going far enough in the fight to end gender-based violence. Will this government listen to Canadians and listen to the United Nations and act on a national action plan to end violence against women?
The Minister for the Status of Women.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, we remember the 14 young women whose lives ended in an act of gender-based violence that shocked a nation. On December 6th, we must reflect on the phenomenon of gender-based violence in our society and consider concrete actions to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls. Every action matters when it comes to preventing gender-based violence. And so our government is developing a federal gender-based violence strategy that will raise awareness and take action to end the violence that women and girls face in our country today. Thank you.
The honourable member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Mr. Speaker, according to a new study from StatsCan, the number of young people aged 24 and less with full-time employment dropped 20% in 30 years, while the number of young people working part-time tripled. Salaries for young people have also decreased in comparison with previous generations. Job churn for young people is now scientifically proven. What is the plan for the Prime Minister and the Minister for Youth to ensure or guarantee good quality full-time jobs for people my age and for future generations?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am proud to say that we have announced the formation of the expert panel on youth employment, which is helping to generate a bold and innovative ideas to address those very concerns. In addition, I want to point out that we put in $1.5 billion to increase grants, $175 million transferred to the provinces and territories for training, an additional $85 for union-based training, $73 million for work-integrated learning, and $165 million for youth employment strategy. And we will continue to work to make...
The honourable member for Chilliwack Hope.
Mr. Speaker, the Energy East pipeline will replace around 700,000 barrels of foreign oil per day with Canadian oil at East Coast refineries. New Brunswick's Liberal Premier says there's still a strong need for Energy East, and the Natural Resource Minister says there's still room for it. So will he finally restart the hearings and commit today that he will accept the recommendation of the independent, arm's-length, science-based National Energy Board review, or will the Liberals kill the project for political reasons like they did with the Northern Gateway pipeline?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, the process is unfolding according to the timelines, but I would have thought that the honourable member would want to talk about the two pipelines that were approved last week that will create 22,000 jobs in his province, in Alberta, and right across the country. And I've had conversations with energy workers, whom those opposite have been defending all of these months. So why isn't it time to say that these decisions are in the interests of the workers of Alberta and all of Canada?
Honourable member for Chilliwack, Hope.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Northern Gateway Pipeline was in the interest of workers as well. When the minister delayed the Trans Mountain Pipeline by half a year for the Liberals' ministerial advisory panel process, we were told it would create pipeline peace, love, and social license. Well, how's that working out, Mr. Speaker? The panel was completely ignored. Pipeline opponents are promising coordinated civil disobedience, and the ministers threatened to call in the army. Great success, Mr. Speaker. Will the minister admit that all he has accomplished with his unnecessary delays and provocations is to stir up dissent, inflame tensions, and make it more difficult to get this pipeline built?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Honourable member knows that conversations about pipelines in Canada are not generally all calm. For example, in the New Democratic Party, you have many of those who think that Rachel Notley and union members are on the right track. Other members might disagree. Within other communities, you have differences of opinion. But I just think that after all of the questions, all of the energy that the official opposition has put into encouraging us to approve pipelines, he would reflect for a moment and be grateful that 22,000 Canadians will have work.
The honourable member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, November job numbers show the most unemployment in Alberta in a quarter century. More Albertans lost their jobs last month than in all of the rest of Canada. 13,000 more full-time jobs lost right before Christmas. But today the Minister of Natural Resources claimed that Albertans have a spring in their step. People are devastated. They're losing their jobs, they're losing their homes, they're being forced to use food banks. How can the Liberals be so out of touch?
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, since our government took power in November or October last year, according to StatsCan, there's been 183,200 jobs that have been created from coast to coast to coast, including Alberta as well, Mr. Speaker. And when you ask companies why they invest in Canada, it's very clear it's because of the policies that we put forward, the investments that we're making in infrastructure, the investments that we're making to help the middle class, Mr. Speaker. We have a plan that's creating jobs, that's creating growth across the country, and particularly in Alberta, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, investing in infrastructure to support the move to a cleaner transportation system will make it easier for Canadians to choose low-carbon vehicles while reducing greenhouse gas emissions and creating middle-class jobs. Can the Minister of Natural Resources please tell this House about what investments the government is making in low-carbon transportation initiatives to make it easier for Canadians to use cleaner fuels and vehicles?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member from Etobicoke Lakeshore for his question. Yesterday, we announced investments to create a cleaner transportation sector by expanding the infrastructure that supports electric and alternate fuel vehicles. Once fully implemented, our commitment of $62.5 million over 2 years will result in more than 280 electric vehicle charging stations, 9 natural gas refueling stations, and 3 hydrogen refueling stations. By establishing new infrastructure, we are setting Canada's transportation system on a path to a lower carbon future while creating jobs.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, Lebanon has long claimed to be the only democracy in the Arab world, but we know dark forces are constantly at play inside past and current governments. Now, the minister just held what were called productive meetings with Lebanon's president and foreign minister, and he announced $8 million in security and defense assistance for Lebanon. Mr. Speaker, did Canada's minister offer this generous aid, fully aware that the Lebanese foreign minister is on the record equating what he called ISIS and Israeli terrorism?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you very much. The Minister's visit to Lebanon was an important opportunity to reinforce our strong relationship as we continue to work together to achieve peace, security and stability in the Middle East. Working with the UN and other organizations, we're supporting Lebanon in welcoming refugees who are escaping the brutal conflict in Syria and also helping to provide critical services to meet the needs of all Lebanese people. The Minister announced an $8 million commitment to that end. This government will continue to rally the international community to support the victims of the ongoing conflict in Syria.
I urge the honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan, and not to interrupt, and another member is speaking. The honourable member for Vancouver East.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister became emotional when speaking about Syrian refugees. That's understandable when we think about the hardships that they faced before arriving here. Now, month 13th is just days away, and for many Syrian refugees, when federal assistance will abruptly end. Yet over 30% have not had any language training, and BC has the longest waiting list. In fact, I met Syrian refugees who've been here for 2 years, and they still are waiting. How are they supposed to integrate into the workforce if they are still on a wait list for language training?
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for her question and also for her good work in this area. When one is welcoming refugees to Canada, there is nothing more important than to teach them English or French, especially in the case of Syrian refugees who typically speak not a word of either language. And so we have committed hundreds of millions of dollars to this enterprise, and just last month we invested an additional $18 million for language training and settlement, of which $3.2 million is going to go to British Columbia. We've recently, since April, created 7,000 new language spaces. So we are working very hard on this.
The honourable member for Kitchener Centre.
Monsieur le Président, notre gouvernement...
Mr. Speaker, our government supports scientific research, and we know that scientific expertise must guide decisions.
This House on ways she is ensuring science and evidence makes it to the cabinet table. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Science.
Monsieur le Président, je voudrais...
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague, the member for Kitchener Centre, for his question.
The government was elected on a promise to respect science and to restore it to its rightful place. Yesterday, we delivered on that promise and launched the search for the Chief Science Advisor. This person will ensure that government science is made available to Canadians, that government scientists can speak freely about their work, and that scientific analyses will inform decision-making.
Yes, excellent. For Chatham, Kent, Leamington.
Mr. Speaker, in my region of southwestern Ontario, greenhouse growers use large amounts of electricity. As hydro rates continue to soar, businesses are leaving Canada, killing jobs across the country. The latest, Moochie Farms in Kingsville, are paying 3 times more for hydro in Ontario than across the border. So guess what? They're expanding, but not in Canada, in the U.S. How can the Liberals justify imposing a carbon tax on job creators when our sky-high hydro rates are already driving them out of the country?
Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, according to StatsCan, we have seen 183,200 jobs created since November 2015. In particular, if you look at GE, they have created 220 jobs in Welland. And you know what the Vice Chairman said, John Rice? He said Canada has all the essential ingredients to succeed in this new digital industrial reality. That is an investment made in Welland. With respects to Bell Helicopter, Textron, you know what Mitch Snyder said, the President and CEO of Bell Helicopter? Mirabel is a vital part of Bell Helicopter's long-term growth strategy, and we want to thank and commend the federal government for its leadership. That's creating...
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, Bill C-29 will put consumer protection at the mercy of Bay Street banks in Toronto. It's an all-out attack on consumers and Quebec's ability to make its own societal choices. The Quebec National Assembly has unanimously denounced C-29, as have consumer protection advocates, notaries, and an army of constitutional experts and law professors. In Quebec, we want to defend consumers, not big banks, Mr. Speaker. Will the 40 Quebec members on the government side take a stand? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we want to be very clear. It's important to protect consumers across the country. We want to protect consumers through legislation that will improve protection in the banking sector. That is our objective. It will improve the situation across the country for Canadian citizens. The Honourable Member for Joliette. Mr. Speaker, with C-29, we're seeing the opposite occur in Quebec. Yesterday, the parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Finance played the little guy from Shawinigan card. That's exactly what we're talking about, because people from Shawinigan are no different from other Quebecers. They want their elected officials to defend them, not the banks. And this goes to all his colleagues from Quebec. The National Assembly is urging them to take a stand for the people who elected them. Will they do that once and for all, or are they simply here to get themselves a ministerial limousine? Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we have improved the situation for consumers across the country. It's important to protect Canadian consumers, and that is exactly what we want to do through Bill C-29.
Order. I would like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of the Honourable Jackson Lafferty, Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of the Northwest Territories. J'ai l'honneur de faire savoir à la Chambre que le...
I have the honor of informing the House that the Senate has transmitted a message to the House saying that it has passed the following bill, which it submits for assent from the bill. Bill S4, an act to implement a convention and arrangement to avoid double taxation and to prevent fiscal evasion in terms of income tax, and modifying an act and modifying similar measures.
Order. The first from the honourable member for Selkirk, Interlake Eastman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise on Standing Order 18 to deal with some disrespectful comments that occurred at committee from the member of Kelowna Lake Country. Now, I realize that committees are masters of their own domain, Mr. Speaker, but I'd welcome your opinion on this situation. I invite you, Mr. Speaker, to remind all chair occupants to be very fair, temperate, and unbiased when they are in the chair. Now, the example I wish to give is a comment by the member of Kelowna Lake Country, who is the chair of the Standing Committee on National Defence. Now, it was just brought to my attention this morning that at our meeting last Thursday, December the 1st, at our National Defence meeting, the chair, who is also the member for Kelowna Lake Country, said when he thought his microphone was shut off after an exchange between he and I don't think he was referring to the Minister of National Defence who I was questioning, but at 12 minutes, 24 seconds, 13, he said, "You jerk," in response to me. So I would invite you, Mr. Speaker, to remind all chair occupants to be fair and temperate and act in a parliamentary manner.